Hello, Mr. Martino here for your favorite teacher. And today we're going to continue our lesson on linear equations. If you haven't seen the first one, I suggest you go to it now because this is just going to be a continuation of that first one. So I'm going to assume that you looked at it and you understood what the term balancing meant and how you were able to solve simple equations using the balancing method. So with this lesson, we're going to see how we can actually do multi-steps to solve equations. Some equations have x's to solve on both sides of our equation sign. In the first part of this series, we only looked at having x's on one side of an equation. Now we're going to try and deal with it when we have x's on both sides of the equation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just write the equation as it is. What we now have to do is we now have to put all of the x's on one side of that equation sign. In other words, we have to remove either from the right hand side or the left hand side all the x's that are on that side. And we do that by doing the opposite operation that is there with the x's. In this case, I'm going to remove the 4x's from the right hand side by subtracting 4x's on both sides. When I subtract 4x from both sides, it removes the x's from the right hand side, but because I'm balancing off my equations, it also removes it from the left hand side, and that way my equation remains valid. So if I subtract 4x from both sides and I simplify it, I get 2x's plus 7 is equal to 19. I've now reached the state where I have x's only on one side, and I can now continue by getting rid of all of our other numbers and putting them onto the other side of the equation. And remember, I do it by doing inverse operations. So, first off, I'm going to minus 7 from both sides. When I do that, I simplify to get 2x's is equal to 12. And now I can simply divide both sides by 2, and I get x is equal to 6. It's worth going through the slide again because it's a very important slide for us to be able to understand how to solve linear equations, especially when we have x's on both sides. When we get our answers to these types of questions, answers can take the form of negative values, or they can take the form of either fractions or even decimal answers. So we have to be very careful that we do the right thing. So let's take a look at some questions in solving linear equations. These are some reasonably difficult linear equations. So I suggest that you pause the video for between 15 to 20 minutes to solve these equations. Take your time with them. They're a little tricky, but I'm sure you can solve them. If you need to go back to this slide, just go back and check and see what I suggested you do when you solve. So now, if you are finished, we can take a look at the answers. Make sure that you've gotten all of these questions correct, because it's very important that you don't miss out any questions and that you really show understanding of solving linear equations. I hope this was helpful. This is Mr. Martino for your favorite teacher.